are watching KUTV Primetime News with Omondi Otieno.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us on KUTV Primetime News. Remember, you can share thoughts with us on our social media platforms on Facebook, KUTV Kenya, and on Twitter, KUTV_Kenya. The bandit attacks and perennial clashes in Laikipia have dominated the news headlines in the recent past. The government has since deployed security in the region to calm the situation. But for how long will this last? Earlier on, we held a discussion with Ms. Furaha Charo to expound on the security puzzle and how sanity can be restored in the region. In the recent past, Olmoran region in Laikipia has not known peace. News on perennial conflicts between the pastoralists and the ranchers have always hit the headlines. Sprawling banditry attacks have seen hundreds of families flee their homes for safety due to the increased series of attacks. Today, we are having a discussion with Furaha Charo, who is a program advisor, land and natural resource governance, to understand how the conflicts erupted, what is the root cause of all this, and what are the measures that can be enacted for peace and harmony to find its way back to the community. Furaha Charo.
Yes.
Thank you so much for dedicating your time for this discussion. So maybe introduce yourself to our viewers to get to know who Furaha is.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Furaha Charo, and I'm a land rights practitioner, currently working at the Kenya Human Rights Commission as program advisor, land and natural resource governance.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, right into our discussion.
Yes.
Kindly bring us to speed with the state of peace in Laikipia.
Yeah. I would say the state of peace in Laikipia right now, we can't say there's so much stability, though from the best of my knowledge is that things are a bit calm right now, but the calmness does not mean that everything has been resolved. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Now, the current quagmire that we are seeing in Laikipia, the conflicts between communities, we've seen herders and pastoralists having fights here and there. Can we say it's a natural one? Because we are seeing these happening just a few months to elections. Can we say it's a natural one?
No. I wouldn't say it's a natural. The causes of whatever we are seeing right now in the media is natural, because from the very last engagements we had with representatives of the Laikipia community is that the root cause of what we are seeing right now in the media, it's unresolved historical land injustices that have manifested in the conflicts that we are seeing right now in the media. So it's not natural. It's because of historical land injustices that have not been resolved for very long. And right now they're manifesting in the form of conflicts between maybe farmers and pastoralists.
Now, also in the news, we are seeing something about the white settler lands, the leases are coming to an end.
Yes.
And we've also seen the absentee landlords, which probably many people don't understand. So how does it come into play in the conflicts that we are seeing in Laikipia right now?
Yeah, regarding the absentee landlords and the leases, it's because because of the unresolved historical land claims in the region. You find that right now, communities are aware about the leases that are almost coming to an end, and that is why I think the claims are coming out strongly now. And you find most of the absentee landowners are not using the land, so the lands are vacant. And most of these absentee landowners, and even for the people who have leases on those lands, you find that they have blocked, especially for the pastoral communities. Pastoral communities currently no longer have access to stock routes. They have no access to some of the water points, because most of these landowners, they have fenced large, vast acreages of land, which in them also have water sources that livestock, of course, depend on, and also pasture. So what we are seeing right now is that in as much as community is aware, some of the leases are almost coming to an end. They are not seeing that deliberate attempt by the government towards prioritizing the needs of the community, because the communities, mostly the farmers and even the pastoral communities, they all have an interest in the land. And therefore, the fact that these issues are not being addressed, the issues of historical absentee landowners, the issues of leases almost coming to an end, to expiry, those issues are not being publicly conversed. They are not in the public domain. And therefore, this has created some sort of frustration, and the communities right now are strongly coming out to speak up about these issues, because it's time that if these leases have expired, let the lands be allocated to the communities that who have been there since time immemorial, because the indigenous communities, and they have every right to these lands.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, that brings us to the question, because we are saying there are a number of people who have fenced large acreage of land, and the communities there are suffering. They don't have access for the land, for their livestock, and also water. So that the question is, who are now the rightful owners? Who are the original, the owners, the ancestral? These ancestral land, they belong to who rightfully?
Okay, if for me, I would say the land belongs to the indigenous community, the people on the ground. Because one thing about Laikipia is that Laikipia, it has so many ethnical dimensions, but all of these groups, most of them, they have like a historical link to that land. So for me, I would say that the land belongs to the indigenous people in Laikipia County, and the government needs to make deliberate efforts to go to the ground and map out the communities, such that when the leases have come, with the leases almost expiring, the community needs to be prioritized. The livestock needs, the pasture needs, and also the livelihood needs of the communities needs to be prioritized in the land allocations.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, we saw when these conflicts were erupting, we saw what the Interior CS Fred Matiang'i was saying, that illegal herders are intruding the lands. Now, why would you term them as illegal herders when these lands belongs to them ancestrally? Why would you term them as illegal herders?
Well, I wouldn't know why, but I would say it's not fair to the community, because looking at even most of the pastoral communities, for instance, like the Maasai, the Pokot, and the other groups, they are indigenous communities. That's their land. So imagine, you being an indigenous member of a particular community, the land being your ancestral home, and then you being called an illegal herder. It's not fair, and I think it's somehow sort of profiling of pastoral communities, knowing so well that that has been their way of life. That has been their culture, keeping livestock. That is their way of life. So terming them as illegal on their ancestral land, I don't think that's fair at all.
Now, one thing we saw from the conflict that have been ongoing, we've seen it from the exchange we saw between the Morans and the security that were deployed in the region. Even the head of police was saying that these Morans are having sophisticated weapons, M16 rifles that not even the government are using. Now, don't you think there could be some underworld powers that are, supporting this? They are facilitating them with these rifles for the conflicts in the region.
Well, I would not comment much on that, because, I'm not privy to the firearms in the area, and maybe who's providing them or who's not providing them. But I would say one thing that has come out clearly from our engagements with the Laikipia community is that, because land is the root cause.
Right.
But apart from the land being the root cause, of course, there are also other political issues that somehow have come in to worsen the land issues in the area. Yeah. Right.
Now, talking of land and now politics, we saw on 8th of September, Tiati MP William Kamket and the former Laikipia North MP Matthew Lempurkel, were arrested concerning these conflicts that are in the region. Don't you think, apart from now the land itself, these conflicts in the region could be, instigated by politicians as well?
Yeah, probably. It could be or could not be the case. But as I've said, because you find most of the times, whenever there's a land issue somewhere, there's a land conflict, you find if it's not addressed, it's politicized. And when it's politicized, it ends up worsening the situation, and also the root cause is not addressed. Because from where I sit, I understand, and as much as there are so many factors that have come in, security factors, also the issues of politics has also come in. But for me, I would say, in as much as there's politics involved, but had the land issue in Laikipia, had the community been given access to their land, I think even some of these factors that are manifesting in terms of politics, profiling and marginalization, these are the issues that are manifesting, are all stemming from the land issues. So for us to be able to address all these other issues that are now coming up, the government needs to be deliberate in addressing the root cause. Because anytime even when you're sick, when you go to the hospital, they first do a diagnosis to determine what is the root cause before even deciding whether it's medication or what sort of remedy to give to you. Right. So for me, I'd say even in the Laikipia case, in as much as politics has come in, profiling has come in, of course security issues have come in, but the root cause is land which has led to conflicts, and it's now evolving and it's taking other dimension. Right. And of course this leaves the community to their disadvantage.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, so far we are seeing what the government has done so far is deploying security in the region. Now, do you think security in itself has yielded fruits? The efforts that the government have done so far now with the security, has it yielded fruits? Is it something that would eventually bring peace to the region? Right.
Okay, for me, I would say, because issues like bringing in security agencies, we are only addressing the manifestations of the root problem. So apart from bringing security, I think the government needs, number one, to acknowledge that the problem is land. Yes. And once acknowledging that the problem is land, and them having information on the status of the leases that are about to expire, and the fact that, especially now with drought, communities, especially the pastoralists, they need access to water sources. There's so much that there are so many values that the communities have tied to these lands. So apart from addressing these other manifestations of security and everything, eventually, or rather it will be good practice that the government goes to the ground and makes deliberate attempts to address the land issues. Because even if maybe they would deploy security apparatus on the ground now to solve, maybe to just, maybe spread tension, or maybe to suppress community, it's only temporary, because for how long will it work? And that is why you see like the issues like Laikipia, it has been on and off media because the root cause has not yet been addressed. Yeah, so the issues of deploying security, for me, I think that's plastic. It's cosmetic, but the real issue that needs to be addressed is the land issue.
The land issue.
Yeah.
Now, from maybe you say your interactions with those communities, what are they saying on the ground? How can now the government itself narrow down to the land issue so that we don't have those conflicts of herders now coming in? They want a place for them for their cattle, and the farmers as well. Now, how can the government come into play now, from your own opinion, that now they bring at least a solution that will bring an end to these raging conflicts?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think the government, number one, it needs to share information.
Right.
What is the exact status of, because there are leases in that area which are almost coming to an end. There are so many conservancies, there are so many ranches. There are a lot of investments on that land. So number one, I think the government needs to come out clearly and be transparent, especially the Ministry of Lands. What is the status of all these leases? How much land is currently It's because with the conservancies, most of them are used for keeping endangered species. But for the other parcels of land, how much land, how many leases have expired? What is the status? What is how much period is left? And then once we understand this is the much land that is available right now for the community to be resettled, the government needs to go back to the community and do mapping and see how many people right now, what are the needs of the community, such that when either developing whether a resettlement process or whether it's just coming up with a way of ensuring that apart from people being resettled, this mechanism will also take into consideration the diverse needs of the community, because as I've told you, they are pastoral communities, right, and also they are farming communities. For the farming communities, of course, they need land for crop farming, but for the pastoral, their way is not settled. They move, and in moving, because that is their way of life from way back, they're used to that life. I mean, you have to move cattle from one place to another, and in that process, they need stock routes, they need water access points. So I think for me, what I would say, this is not something that maybe can be decided either from maybe from boardrooms or offices. This is something that it needs to be done in a participatory manner, and all agencies, the Ministry of Lands, the National Lands Commission, the KWS, all institutions, like it needs to be like an intergovernmental sort of approach, because there are so many interests. There are so many agencies involved in this and who have a stake in the land holdings in Laikipia County.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, talking of interest, people who are interested in the Laikipia lands, we read it from the papers. There are some people who have directed the water, the pathways of water into their own private lands in Laikipia, denying access for, let's say, the pastoralists access to water for their cattle and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, don't you think there are some people who are having some sort of selfish interest in the region to deny maybe the community rights to doing their things in their own?
Yeah, definitely that's selfish, because water is, it's very I would say water is a basic commodity for everyone, and therefore for somebody to redirect maybe a water source, whether natural, especially if it's natural, because you see, like, natural water bodies, those are supposed to be public amenities, but for somebody to redirect it for their own use, yeah, I agree, that's very selfish.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, we heard what the Deputy President saying when Dr. Interior CS Fred Matiang'i was in the Senate. He said there's a large tract of land owned by the Deputy President in the region. And then recently the Deputy President was saying the land that is accused of owning in Laikipia should be subdivided for the communities in there. Now, we have not had other talks about it. Don't you think now politics is also playing a major role, because the land that were being the land that was being mentioned is a very large tract of land now, and Ruto himself is saying the land should be subdivided. The government has not moved so far to do whatever the Deputy President was saying. Don't you think now, apart from now the land itself, people conflicting here and there, the big players in politics also have a big stake in the conflicts we are seeing here?
Yeah, probably, because you see, I can't comment with certainty that the Deputy President owns land,
sure,
and maybe other political figures in the area. It could be or it could not be true, and that's what I'm saying. The Ministry of Lands needs to come out clearly. Who are the landowners in Laikipia? What is the status of those, the different, whether it's a leasehold, what is the exact status of some of those land holdings? And then come up with a mechanism that, of course, prioritizes on the needs of the community. Because in most instances, we find that, and I would wish to reiterate this, that we need to shift conversations from land ownership to land use. Because even in those chunks of land, especially the large chunks of land that the communities have highlighted that are fenced, for most of them, especially for the absentee landowners, they're not being used. And you see a big chunk of land, it's fenced, it denies you access to public roads, denies you access to stock routes, denies you access to water facilities for your livestock. You see, it doesn't make sense for somebody to own such vast land at the expense of the indigenous community who need to use this land but now cannot access this land because somebody somewhere has decided to just grab land, fence, and maybe not use either for speculation or whatever reasons they decide to hold such vast lands. So I would say, in as much as that the issue of land has been politicized, I think that is even worsening the situation. So I think the Ministry of Land, because another thing that came out from the engagements we had with the community is that there's lack of clarity, especially from the Ministry of Lands. There's lack of openness because especially like the right to access to information. It's a constitutional right, but it seems like it's not being realized. And the community, especially in Laikipia, they've not gotten, there's that lack of transparency and openness in who owns these lands.
Right.
You know, because somebody maybe might just see some land, it's fenced, it's large, but who is the owner? You know, does he have a freehold or leasehold title? What is the status? You know, such things. I think they need to come out clearly.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Furaha, as we wind up this discussion, what could be your final remarks? What could be at least your message to the country and to now those communities in Laikipia?
Yeah.
Yeah, in about 2 minutes.
Yes. So for me, I would urge the government, because last week we had a press release here at the Kenya Human Rights Commission, and we had representatives of the Laikipia community, and I think they spoke up what they want. And I think I wish to reiterate the same, that the issue in Laikipia, the historical land injustice, or rather the historical land claims in Laikipia, they have to be addressed. Because these other issues, they are really cosmetic. The security, you know, the profiling, issues around calling another group illegal herders. Those will not, also the politics between around the whole issue of Laikipia, land in Laikipia, I think those will not help. And one thing also came out clearly, because the group that we met, or rather the group that gave spoke to the media last week here, it's not just maybe one group, a pastoral community. There were different groups. There are pastoralists, there are farmers. So meaning these people are family. They've been coexisting on that parcel of land for long.
Sure.
So saying that maybe like trying to create hate between this group and this group, you know, maybe profiling one group and trying maybe to spread maybe hate among the groups, I don't think it would really help. And the fact that they were here and you could see the face of the different interests, because they are pastoralists, they are farmers, and they all admit that there's a land issue in Laikipia that needs to be addressed. So for me, I don't think the community there, I don't think they're enemies.
Sure.
Yeah, I think they are all speaking in one voice, and which is that they're calling upon the government to go to the ground, the Ministry of Lands, all the stakeholders, all the government agencies that have an interest with the land in Laikipia. For instance, the National Lands Commission, by the virtue that it has a mandate to investigate and address historical land injustices. The Ministry of Lands, by the fact that, of course, it has the Ministry of Lands, Planning, and physical planning and urban. They also have an interest in that, because with issues of land, of course, there's planning, the issues of leases are registered by the Ministry of Lands. So all these agencies, land agencies, the Ministry of Lands, the National Lands Commission, the ranches also came up, the conservancies, KWS has to be in the picture. So it needs to be like a coordinated mechanism to bring together all the government agencies that have an interest in that land in Laikipia and have some sort of dialogue with the community. So this can't be something that can be done either with one group, but it needs to be something participatory, it needs to be something open, and it needs to be something done with utmost goodwill. Because if there's no political goodwill to address the root problem in Laikipia, then I think this conflict will be on and off, and it's the community who ends suffering at the end of the day.
Sure.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Furaha, for that insightful information. We hope to have you maybe for another discussion when the developments will be coming, so that we ensure that by the end of all this, there is peace and harmony in the region.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Actually, we are planning for a fact-finding.
Right.
And in this fact-finding, we are hoping to bring on board the different agencies involved. Because as I've told you, with the land issue being the root cause, the other manifestations, other human rights violations that are coming up, some including on issues of misadministration, issues of police brutality. There are so many issues that are coming up. So we are hoping that we'll be able to come up with some sort of like a multi-agency task force that will accompany us as we go to do a fact-finding and see how can we identify all issues and see how these agencies can also pick up on the relevant issues and see now how we can fast track following up on some of those issues that would have come up from our fact-finding.
All right.
Yeah.
That will be so essential for this, peace in that region.
Yes.
We hope to keep Kenyans posted.
Yes, we will.
Sure.
Yeah, we will.
On this.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hope to have you for another discussion on maybe whatever shall have transpired.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Asante. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much for following throughout the discussion. That has been Furaha Charo, who is a program advisor, land and natural resource governance. We still hope to have these discussions until peace and harmony finally finds its way back into that community. And with that discussion, we are taking another very short break here on KUTV Primetime News. We still have much for you, so keep it right here. See you on the other side.